763rd Contact Saturday, January 23, 2021, 10:14 p.m. This is an unofficial, unauthorized translation and will definitely contain errors.
Dear father friend, here I am. Let you.
Florena, welcome.
Unfortunately, I was not able to come here earlier, and I had to check with Ptaah first, because, as you know, he is organizing the records of your conversations. He also asked me to explain some things.
That's no problem, but the fact that you couldn't come earlier is understandable, because you have to fulfill your duties. Besides, it's better late than never. And the important thing is that you can bring me the data when you have it now. You know, sometimes I could effectively go crazy, because everything that happens to me in my work is more than a normal person can bear, if I don't, but never mind. And now there's also this thing with the contact report, that they are suddenly listed in the wrong order and show wrong time details, which we had to correct and rectify together again in the last few days. And now there is also the issue with these two contact reports, which again are not correct with the dates and times.
Another person would not continue to do their job. Yanarara and also Zafinat Punch told me what happens when you work, that your writing is maliciously disturbed by some forces in such a way that every word you write is interspersed with numbers and other letters and becomes completely unrecognizable. It would result, they explained to me, that consequently you would have to correct everything again letter by letter, as they both found out themselves when they watched you writing and could also see that you typed everything normally and correctly into the writing keyboard, but then something became visible on the screen that you had not written.
That's right, that's what various core group members saw as well, standing next to me or behind me watching how and what I wrote. But then practically every word was interspersed with other letters and numbers. If you want, you can see for yourself how and what happens when I write, which I then have to painstakingly correct, which is why it takes me so much time when, for example, I retrieve and write down a contact report or do some other writing task. It's just that I have to correct practically every word and therefore spend endless time to then make the whole thing readable through the corrections.
Yes, I'd like to see that.
Well, then please stand here next to me and look closely at my hand as I write now. Well, then, I'll write now.
Ojoden exonekel mejenerse edlexdu, heliexbergsadbarkampersl, tristufdukse, anefeathuchernbersaesedetexoaigers.
Busksão isolgenitante ftcherisnita ausgerkbnalruxustfen. Vies reduzismo bezakmelstfers vesturbnel, atestrenerte.
That would be it now, and what I have written now, I leave it so in the computer, consequently I will not correct it then, but then insert it so in the report when I call up our conversation today.
That's not possible, because I saw for myself how you typed only one letter at a time, completely correctly, with only your index finger. I really can't understand that now.
Eben, and that goes in such a way now already for years, however ever more badly. And that apart from various other self-same occurrences, as also different core group members could observe, like for example Patrick and others, like for example lately also again House Michael, who observed me sitting on the sofa and saw how over or behind my left ear a 2 franc and stuck materialized and then on the table fell. I picked up the coin and handed it to Michael, who noted the year, 1996, after which I took it back and put it in the breast pocket of my shirt, which did me no good, because after seconds my left side of the chest began to hurt tremendously. So I took the coin out again, and then my hand cramped up for maybe 15 or 20 seconds, with the coin bending severely in the way it used to when I foolishly let myself be tempted to do this consciously through my consciousness power.
Yes, this is what Yanarara and Zafinat Punch also told me, with Yanarara saying that she would despair if she were you, because she could not go through this and could not cope with what was happening to you.
That's what she told me, but I can't afford to snap, because I have my work to do either way. It's just a good thing that when these strange incidents happened, there were always people who witnessed what kept happening with me and with my work, consequently they can testify to everything. But it will still be that certain people would declare me crazy if I told them.
What would be like that? Sam Jace told me that strange incidents had already occurred in your workroom back when she was still in contact with you. She herself had also been affected by it twice and had been affected by some kind of unexplainable influences in her central nervous system and had been subjected to a strange kind of a psychote.
Sorry, yes I know, but she told me about it not to talk about it and so not to tell anyone about it.
This kind of psychosis can be quite harmless, but it can also be very serious, as she said that it had happened to other people as well.
Yes, there were various people affected by it, like Dr. Fraud, Elsie Moser, Lou Zinstag, Omar Rose, Guido, Ceci Rugsga, Rolly Rugsga, Silvano, Ingelbert and Maria, then also Wendell Stevens, Ernst Keller and finally it was Professor Hans Spender. He was a psychologist and philosopher, who was interested in me and the contacts with Ubledgeron. He was with me 3 times, the first time at Haldenstrasse 10 in Hinwil, then twice here in the center, where he then experienced something similar to Sam Jace in my office, about which he was tremendously shocked and expressed that he had had a lot to do with alleged hauntings, but he could not explain what was going on here with me. He did not want to have anything to do with it and I should keep quiet about what had happened, just as he would never talk about it, which I am doing now, even if he might get on my nerves because of it.
Sam Jace told me about these psychotic
Don't do it again. The whole thing lasted until 1997, but then it died down, then the little Andis added to it, as they did in the cellar, when Bernadette had the head of one of them in the picture, when she was photographing something in particular. Since then, however, this spook is over.
Well, you don't want to talk about it, so be it. But now I'm interested in what you wrote earlier, which is completely illegible.
It's an old saying that I remembered from my mother. Then I have to write it again and correct it. Look at my finger again.
Fetch the angel of my soul, thou beloved oaf. Eyes you have like camels, and your beauty shines from afar, like an old storm lantern.
This is the wording of the Corpus Delicti, and I have to correct it now, as you see, otherwise it can't be deciphered.
Unbelievable, if I didn't see it with my own eyes.
Exactly, that's why. Well, it's pointless, but you said that to asked you to explain something else.
Yes, of course. To explain that you should remember that you are to give necessary information to all figure members and all interested people worldwide who are well disposed to the figure community, who are devoted to it and who follow its advice, based on your own seeing and knowing what will further arise from the increasing and growing evils in the now following new and third corona epoch. In doing so, you shall be careful to elaborate and carry out the necessary information to disseminate it worldwide, as you and Father Sfoth found together in the early 1950s of the last century, because you observed then, as 'twas said, that all state leaders and health officers were not disseminating the important information, which is now proving to be so. This, he said, was now leading to the disinformation of the populations, who would be helped by the information material you are now to prepare in behaving and understanding the epidemic, as well as in protecting themselves against it with the right measures. Your words and explanations should address in the worldwide figure community and also for all people interested in the matter the most important necessary behaviors and the necessary knowledge, clearly and understandably call everything, as it is your way, and then you should put up and distribute everything on the figure website.
Aha, nice that Tua wants to remind me. But you can report to him that I have not forgotten the agreement with Sfirth and my promise that I will write and disseminate such a letter in February 2021, but well remembered, and therefore I have already written it out, now just a few days before February. Also I had already given it to Bernadette for publication preparation, but I had to take it back again, because I had forgotten an important sentence and also wanted to form my preceding letter differently.
You have, but why only, I ask? Because why only, I ask? I should have known.
Whatever you want to say, don't bother, because it's useless to look for words when you're surprised, because then you're just empty in the head, so to speak. To which we simply say speechless.
That is also common with us.
Then we Earthlings also have something in common in this respect, as well as with regard to some other things.
Such similarities also exist on other worlds and with other peoples, not only with us Pleasuran and the Earth people.
Yes, must be so, because if any beings are capable of a logical verbal communication, then I find it completely normal that everywhere verbalistically the same or similar idioms occur. Now see this though, this is what I wrote. If you are not in a hurry and want to read it, because altogether it's 8 pages.
Yes, and I'm not in a hurry.
Good, then please.
Thank you.
Billy Edward Albert Meier, Beam. Sam J's Silver Star Center. Hinterschmidruti 1225, 8495 Schmidruti, ZH Switzerland, Switzerland.
In honor and dignity to all FIGU members, and worldwide in friendship, acquaintance to all with the FIGU ethos, like-minded as well as appreciative associated fellow men. Dear and esteemed FIGU members, friends and acquaintances, I would like to address these lines to all, unfortunately a little late, due to overflowing work, and wish you for the year 2021 with a few words in this way for your well-being in terms of health, work, family and in all things of existence the very best.
And also to assure you that we at the center will always keep you in our thoughts, hoping that you will all be healthy, well and spared from what is rampant around the world during the corona epidemic. What unfortunately results in evil in all countries and brings suffering and grief to countless families and people. Try to prevent it in yourselves, in your family, in your circle of friends and acquaintances, by all of you keeping to the necessary safety precautions of wearing masks, keeping your distance and disinfection and all other necessities. I wish for all of you, as well as for all people in our world, to be spared from all evils, but it is necessary and inevitable for every single person to join all safety precautions and protective measures against the very aggressive and dangerous coronavirus and its mutations. In this sense I greet you all and also thank you for all your letters with your dear and good wishes for my 84th birthday. Considering all your good and kind words and wishes, I feel very honored and taken care of, for which I express my special heartfelt thanks to all of you, while also hoping that all of us, without exception, will get through everything well and we will soon be able to enjoy life together again in the old way.
Sincerely, Billy. Roots of all things.
In order to understand, honor and appreciate the existence and life of all living things in the right measure, man must recognize, know and live compassionately with all living things, as well as protect the roots of everything that exists, be it an animal, beast, insect or be it plants, etc., because he is connected with all of them, and like him, All living beings also have an intrinsic aliveness and also feel suffering and pain when physical or psychological harm, torture, anguish or distress is inflicted on them, which is why it is valid, man, do not inflict any agony on any life, because it feels just like you agony and pain, cries and weeps.
SSSC, the 3rd of February 1981. 00:17 hours, Billy. And another word of importance.
Contrary to the intelligent unloose lack of understanding and the unreasonableness of all those stupidly brash and irresponsible conspiracy theorists, lateral thinkers, know-it-alls and querulantirenden, who do themselves morbidly important, in order to mislead the understanding reasonable thinking people, by playing down the corona plague stupidly brashly and trying to represent the whole thing as a lie and fraud or as an underhanded government measure, in order to drastically reduce the blatant overpopulation quickly. This does not correspond to the truth, but to a malicious and irresponsible, deliberately obscuring the real truth and misleading people, life-threatening delusion, which brings suffering, illness, sorrow and grief or even death to many people.
The truth is that the corona epidemic corresponds to a real contagious and life-threatening infectious disease, which causes mass infections and mass deaths, which, moreover, cannot be countered with any medicines and thus can neither be fought nor cured. From the medical point of view, the only solution is a proper and valuable vaccination, which at present is unfortunately still uncertain for a comprehensive effect and guarantee of prevention, because the lack of tests and experience is still insufficient, thus causing more harm than good and even causing deaths as well as long-term damage and late effects, as is unfortunately already proving to be the case and confirming the already early predictions.
What can be done at present against the corona epidemic and for the personal as well as fellow human health well-being, should be obligation for each the intelligendum, understanding and the reason pregnant humans and be followed, because that is the only real possibility to do personally something for the own and the fellow humans' protection against the aggressive coronavirus. And this alternative consists basically in the following feasibilities.
The wearing of suitable respiratory masks, adapted to the situation, is to be strictly observed everywhere where the necessity requires it. When wearing respirators, it is necessary to take them off from time to time in order to breathe fresh air for 10 to 15 minutes, so that the lungs can recover as a result of the stress caused by breathing through the masks. Keep the appropriate distance from the nearest person according to the wind and people, family, friendship, acquaintances, strangers, is usually about 2 meters. Disinfecting the hands with a suitable disinfectant, which is not chemical and does not contain chlorine, but about 70 to 75% alcohol or ethanol, which has been used since the 12th century and can be mixed in any concentration in water. A description clarifies that the main mechanism of action is the ability of alcohol ethanol to change proteins, including bacteria and some types of viruses that have a coating of different proteins. The SARS-CoV-2 virus, the causative agent of the corona disease, has a coating of protein that is very destructible by disinfectant made from ethanol. This disinfectant deprives the corona germ of the possibility to enter the human organism, consequently it cannot settle and multiply. Ethanol not only attacks the shell of bacteria and viruses, but also destroys the protein structure of fungi. Ffp respirators.
All FFP masks from FFP1, FFP2 and FFP3 generally correspond to respirators, which, as the name suggests, are designed to protect the respiratory system and must be disposed of after use. Depending on the mask class, respirators can be worn and used only for a short time, such as cheap and practically almost or completely useless paper masks or self-made cheap fabric masks. Depending on the case, which each person must decide for himself, protective masks can be used and worn and protected by them only for a very short time, but on the other hand, depending on the mask class and its quality, for 8, 10 or 12 hours etc., before they have to be disposed of.
The fine, almost invisible fine dust particles or microorganisms etc. that float around in the air we breathe are, due to their size, among the non-negligible hazards in the working environment as well as with regard to health protection against germs. Due to the danger of contagious diseases as well as radioactive contamination or carcinogenic substances such as bacteria and viruses, etc., the protective masks designed for occupational breathing protection are also used to protect against germs of all kinds, on the one hand to protect the respiratory system sustainably and on the other hand to protect the organism against germs so that no damage occurs. This can be effectively ensured only by suitable respirators with sufficient protection classes, so-called FFP masks, by which any long-term risks can be reduced or completely avoided. In terms of suitable and good respirators, the world leader is the brand 3M, where this name is an abbreviation of the U.S. company Ash Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing Company, that is 3XM. This company corresponds to a global multi-technology corporation headquartered in St. Paul in the U.S. state of Minnesota, which is known to consumers not only as 3M, but also for its registered brands Ash Post-it, Roughly, adhesive notepads, and Ash Scotch, among others. The group produces more than 50,000 different products based on 47 technology platforms and more than 25,000 patents.
Why respirators should be worn?
Aerosols that are exhaled in saliva droplets or smaller or larger quantities of secretion droplets or expiration droplets from the mucous membranes in the mouth and nose, which are excreted into the air and released when speaking, mostly have a diameter of between 0.5 meters and 12 meters. Meters stands for micrometer, equals 1 micrometer equals 1 millionth of a meter equals 1,000th of a millimeter. Previously, a micrometer was called a micron or mu after the Greek letter mu, whereby in particular the larger saliva or secretion droplets can contain infecting microorganisms. Microorganisms or a microorganism, a microbe, is a microscopically small single living organism, which is not visible to the naked eye. It is called micro if it is at least 2 dimensions smaller than about 30 meters. Most microorganisms are unicellular organisms, but they also include few-celled tiny or micro-living organisms.
Microorganisms, like many tiny material particles, seed dust and spores of all kinds, are almost or completely invisible substances suspended in the air we breathe, through which they are spread. The microorganisms correspond to the most insidious health hazards for humans. Particle filtering half masks offer protection against such hazards, however, and these masks are divided into 3 protection classes: FFP1, FFP2 and FFP3. The subdivision into 3 FFP classes is made by the abbreviation FFP, which stands for filtering face piece. A respiratory protection mask covers nose and mouth and is composed of different filtering materials and the mask itself.
The information given by me is purely non-binding information, to which it must be explained that the specified protection classes are usually suitable for various applications in working areas, are used and serve in this respect safety bidding the corresponding minimum requirements. In principle, the responsibility of the use of the masks lies with the persons themselves who use them, although it is recommended to check them before use. namely whether the respirator allows breathing and whether it meets the requirements regarding the rejection of hazardous substances and the user's breathing quality. Therefore, for the selection of proper personal protective masks, an on-site assessment must always be made when purchasing masks, because if breathing difficulties should occur while wearing the mask, then neither the sales stores nor the manufacturers of the masks assume any liability for any health difficulties or damages.
If hazardous substances and their concentration are known, a specific FFP mask can sometimes already be selected. The classification of masks is based not only on the filtering performance of the mask, but also on the maximum permissible leakage resulting from the leakage of the product or the permeability of the filtering material and the openings in places where the mask does not fit exactly on the face.
Respirators are used to protect the wearer from airborne pollutants, such as respiratory toxins, particles, spores, dust and microorganisms, etc., as well as bacteria. The masks prevent such harmful substances from entering the respiratory tract, for example, during work, influenza epidemics and pandemics. They are used especially at workplaces, in rescue services and by firefighters. Respirators are especially used in the nursing sector and during operations, where medical masks or surgical masks are used.
The importance of respiratory protection.
Hazardous particles may be more or less or very carcinogenic or radioactive, while others may damage the body's respiratory system over decades and possibly over a lifetime, leading to the long-term development of serious diseases. If the masks are used in work areas, then workers may only have to deal with unpleasant odors.
Respiratory masks protect against aqueous and oily aerosols, smoke and fine dust at work in 3 classes, and the masks are standardized throughout Europe in terms of their protective function according to N149. Particle filtering half masks or fine dust masks are divided into 3 protection classes: FFP1, FFP2, FFP3.
Respirators protect mainly against respirable dust, smoke and liquid mist, so-called aerosols, but not against vapor and gas. Aerosols are also exhaled by humans, but they also excrete saliva droplets when they speak, so the aerosols and droplets can be inhaled by other people and thus infected with pathogens.
Respirators serve 2 purposes for infectious agents or other contagious diseases, such as influenza, epidemics and pandemics.
1. Wearing protective masks prevents ill persons from releasing aerosols uninhibitedly into the air by breathing and speaking, which can be inhaled by other persons and thus become infected with germs and also fall. 2. Wearing protective masks prevents ill persons from releasing aerosols uninhibitedly into the air by breathing and speaking.
2. By wearing protective masks, healthy persons are prevented from ingesting foreign bodies such as toxins or germs, but they are also prevented from being infected with the germs of sick persons through exhaled aerosols and expelled expiratory droplets of sick persons and from falling ill themselves, which is what respiratory protective masks are designed to prevent.
A respirator is composed of various filter materials and the mask itself, and this covers the nose and mouth. Basically, such masks are designed for various work activities. At workplaces where the workplace limit value of dust, smoke and aerosols, etc. in the air breathed is exceeded. This means that respiratory masks prevent the inhalation of excessive concentrations of such harmful substances, which may cause serious damage to human health or death. Therefore, if a certain concentration of harmful substances of any kind is exceeded, but especially with regard to infectious germs, the wearing of respiratory protection masks is usually obligatory simply on the basis of personal responsibility and as a result of intelligence, understanding and reason.
Respirators with or without valve.
1. Respirators without a valve filter both the fresh air that is inhaled from the outside and the used air that is depleted of oxygen, thus providing protection for the person wearing the mask.
2. General protective masks with a valve only filter the inhaled air and are therefore only used for the personal protection of the person wearing the protective mask, which is why the valve masks are not designed for external protection.
3. Special respirators, which are not bigger than normal nose-mouth masks and are expensive to buy, $200 and more, also have a small electric actuator for adjustable breathing air supply, as their valve excretes not only the inhaled but also the used breathing air with up to 5 times filtration.
4. Respirators with expiration valves are not suitable for positively ill persons, because the used breathing air can flow out unhindered through the valve and thus the released germs can spread all around in the air.
The same types of masks that are used for work are also absolutely useful against infectious germs, so they are also used in this respect to prevent germs from entering the respiratory tract and mucous membranes, and thus from entering the organism, multiplying in it and causing diseases. Depending on this, certain mask classes must be selected in order to ensure the best possible protection.
The decisive protection classes FFP1, FFP2 and FFP3 offer, depending on the total leakage risk, the permeability of the mask material and the filtering of particle sizes up to 0.6 meters, respiratory protection for different concentrations of material pollutants, toxins, spores, particles, microorganisms, bacteria, smoke and vapors etc., but not against gases, radiation such as radioactivity as well as vibrations.
Depending on the quality class of the mask, good respiratory protection masks can also provide a certain degree of safety against viruses up to 94% or a maximum of 96%. Although it must be clear that absolute safety against viruses cannot be, viruses also cannot be killed, but only destroyed, because they are not life forms, but lifeless organic structures. Only living beings can be killed, but not lifeless organisms.
Concerning the total leakage risk, the filter passage and the leakage of the material of respiratory masks as well as the connection to face and nose. It is also important that the mask must be adapted to the human anatomy, that it must be adapted to the face as far as possible. Innovative filtering technology of the mask is also important, because breathing resistance must be low and breathing must not be impeded by trapped particles in the filter, even if the respirator is used several times.
Respirator classes. FFP1. Respirators of class FFP1 may only be used in environmental areas where no toxic or fibrogenic or protein aerosols are present. The fourfold occupational exposure limit of respirators of class FFP1 must not be exceeded. In addition, the protective masks can mainly only be used for a short time and must be changed frequently as soon as they accumulate moisture due to breathing and talking, as is also the case when dealing with people, because they only provide short-term and, moreover, only weak protection against aerosols and saliva droplets.
Respirators of protection class FFP1 are generally suitable for working environments in which only non-toxic materials are present. They have a separation efficiency of 80% and are designed and useful for approximately 4 times the workplace exposure to pollutants such as dust and other non-toxic materials.
B. Respirators of protection class FFP1 are in no way suitable with regard to toxic substances, bacteria, gases or viruses of any kind. But these masks only protect against material particles, such as among others against non-toxic types of dust such as cellulose, cement, plaster, limestone, spores or pollen, etc.
C. Fabric masks, also self-made ones of any kind, usually correspond, in the best case, to the mask protection class FFP1, however, they are absolutely useless against pathogens of any kind. Consequently, such masks do not offer any protection against germs and therefore should neither be manufactured nor used. Basically, such masks act only as a pretense of false facts or illusory as a conceit in relation to a protective function against germs. FFP2 respirators of protection class FFP2 are designed for working environments in which harmful and mutagenic substances occur and are suspended in the air breathed. This class of masks is designed to capture at least 92% of airborne particles and must therefore be used for work where the pollutant limit value of the hazardous substance in question is no more than 10 times the permissible concentration.
A Class FFP2 respirators should be used responsibly in all cases where infectious germs are circulating, for personal protection as well as for the protection of others.
B. FFP2 class respirators have a separation efficiency of at least 92%, which means that the respirator is effective in repelling foreign substances from entering the respiratory tract. The higher the filtration efficiency of the respirator, the better its performance.
C. Generally speaking, the filtration efficiency is the ratio of the quantity or concentration of the foreign substance to be separated, which is retained in the filtering system of the mask and prevents it from entering the respiratory tract. And in simpler terms, it means that the degree of separation is what is stopped and retained at the front of the mask, so that it cannot pass through the mask and enter the respiratory tract.
D. FFP2 class respirators also protect against toxic dust types, such as calcium oxide, concrete dust, granite or zinc oxide smoke.
E. Respirators of protection class FFP2 also protect to a large extent against bacteria, and to a certain extent against viruses.
F. Respirators of FFP2 protection class also protect against various hazardous and mutagenic substances in the air breathed, which are still unknown to science. FFP3 respirators of the protection class FFP3 offer a good protection also with high load of the breathing air and show, according to plagiarism research results, a separation efficiency of 94% to 96%, however not 98% to 99%, as according to terrestrial virological wrong data is maintained. These percentage calculations say that therefore no 100% security can be given that in the worst case not nevertheless an infection by disease germs can take place. With 94% or 96%, however, the safety level is very high, which means that there is no need to worry about infection. But this does not mean that mask wearing and spacing can be neglected or stopped.
A. Respirators of protection class FFP3 can be used in working environments where a limit value of toxic substances up to 30 times the industry-specific value is exceeded. Consequently, they protect against, for example, toxic dust types such as from chromium, cobalt, nickel or mold spores.
B. Respirators of protection class FFP3 are very suitable against toxic, carcinogenic and radioactive particles, as well as against bacterial, viral, microorganic and many other germs. To repeat, in order to understand clearly, with a separation efficiency of 94% up to 96%, according to Palladian safe research results, which are probably much more exact accurate contrary to the earthly scientific of 98% to 99% research result claims, the FFP3 mask with proper fit of the mask thus very largely retains many types of health hazardous particles, toxins and microorganisms as well as bacteria and viruses. This is the reason why FFP3 masks are also used in laboratories for handling viruses and bacteria, as well as for many manual work processes and for special chemical and medical necessities. Difference of the respirators: FFP2, FFP3, N95, KN95, P2, DS.
If the respiratory protection standard of the respiratory protection masks of the classes FFP2, FFP3, KN95, N95 is compared with each other, then some differences arise.
Respirators with and without filters are classified worldwide, various strict regulations and standards, and these must have certain required and specific characteristics, as well as the appropriate performance characteristics according to the corresponding standard, and therefore inherent in the respirators.
All respirators of classes FFP2, FFP3, N95, KN95, P2, DS are tested and designed to protect the mask wearer to a certain degree from other infectious germs, including bacteria, many types of microorganisms and viruses.
An epidemic or pandemic corresponds at any time and in any case to an emergency situation, in which not only long-term and effective measures such as lockdown, the strict wearing of respiratory masks and keeping a distance from person to person must be observed, but in particular the use of specifically designed respiratory masks, which prevent the highest possible safety from infection by germs such as bacteria, microorganisms and viruses. Recommended for this purpose,
especially the respirators with the designation 3M, namely of the class type FFP2 and FFP3, which have been tested to separate bioaerosols, such as for example viruses, equivalently or adequately well, respectively, and to retain them from and on the mask.
Respirators of this standard, of the class type 3M FFP2, N95, are particularly recommended, as well as other equivalent products, such as the respirators listed below, which are suitable up to 94% or even 96% to filter out particles up to a size of 0.6 meters contained in the breathing air, as well as bacteria, microorganisms and viruses.
These masks are also good for filtering various air pollutants of all kinds, but not against gases, radiation and vibration.
KN95, China GB 2626 2006.
P2, Australia/New Zealand as, NZA 1716 to 2012.
FFP2, European 149, 2001.
N95, United States NIOSH 42 CFR 84.
DS, Japan JMHLW Notification 214, 2018, Korea First Class, Korea ICML, 2017-64.
FFP3 class respirators meet the international standard and have an even slightly higher filtration performance, which according to Pleiades research results yields filtration up to 96%, contrary to the terrestrial test claim of 99.5%. Therefore, in any case, and even with this best possible mask, there is no guarantee of 100% elimination of germs, at least as far as viruses are concerned. But this type of FFP3 mask also protects against toxic dust, such as chromium, cobalt, nickel or mold spores, etc.
Masks that can protect against viruses up to 94% and 96%.
The following respirators have a filtering capacity of up to 94% or 96%. They offer a slightly better protection than the other types mentioned.
FFP2, N95, KN95, P2, DS and FFP3.
Surgical masks.
Medical face masks.
Surgical masks are usually made of multi-layer, air-filtering non-woven material that is partially coated on the outside with a water-repellent layer. These protective masks are fastened either to the back of the head with straps or with rubber loops to the ears and must always be worn so that the mouth and nose are covered. These surgical protective masks correspond to disposable products and are designed in terms of their filtering performance in urine or MEN 14683.
The medical RISP. Surgical face masks, which are also called surgical masks as well as surgical masks or hygienic masks and have the designation standard N 14683, correspond to medical products and must therefore be marked with S. Unfortunately, counterfeit inferior products of this and other types are widely offered and sold on the market, which are not compliant with the medical face masks, but only ostensibly correspond to the compliant and tested products. Consequently, they also do not provide the protection that is promised.
SSSC, the 20th of January 2021, 5:33 p.m., Billy.
Excerpts from Wikipedia. Use of oral nasal coverings, medical face masks,
and particle filtering half masks, FFP masks.
The corona pandemic, SARS-CoV-2 pandemic, and the COVID-19 illnesses caused by the virus have greatly changed our daily lives. One of the most obvious changes comes from the now mandatory wearing of masks in many areas. By wearing the masks, citizens can do their part to prevent the unchecked spread of the so-called coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2. This should prevent the
transmission of the virus from person to person and subsequently reduce the risk of possible infection.
There are various types of masks, some of which differ significantly in their design and protective effect.
The wearing of masks is always only one part of a comprehensive protection concept with which we are jointly combating the spread of the coronavirus. Therefore, the ASHA+L formula still applies. Keep your distance, pay attention to hygiene, wear an everyday mask, and ventilate.
When using masks, the following should be considered.
Among the masks currently used in infection control, a basic distinction is made between three types of masks.
There are mouth-nose coverings, which are also called, for example, everyday mask, makeshift mouth-nose mask, community mask, the medical face masks known from the medical everyday life, colloquially called, for example, surgical masks, mouth-nose protection, mouth protection. These are medical devices. 3. And the particle filtering half masks, known up to now mainly from the trade sector, which are also colloquially called respiratory protection masks, FFP masks. The name FFP is an abbreviation derived from the English name of the mask/filtering face piece. These masks belong to the product category personal protective equipment, PPE, mouth-nose covering.
Everyday masks or mouth-nose coverings are usually fabric masks that can be very versatile in their appearance. They are often sewn from commercially available fabrics and worn in everyday life. Since they do not belong to the category of medical devices or personal protective equipment, mouth-nose coverings do not have any requirements from laws or technical standards on filtering performance that they must meet. However, they should be made to cover the mouth and nose and fit as close to the face as possible at the edges. Mouth-to-nose coverings, unlike medical face masks or particle filtering half masks, are not tested to appropriate regulatory and standards requirements. They can therefore be placed on the market without these regulatory procedures. Thus, for the materials used for the production of these masks, there are no specifications by the legislator, for example on filtering performance, but specifications may be applicable, for example on the freedom of the textiles used from harmful substances. In most cases, these masks are sewn from commercially available fabrics. Their appearance and impermeability are correspondingly varied, as the fabrics used differ in design and material properties. They are worn in everyday life and are therefore colloquially often called everyday masks.
It is important to distinguish them from medical devices or personal protective equipment. Everyday masks may not be advertised with corresponding performance or protective effects because they have not had to undergo testing procedures in accordance with such requirements. Therefore, everyday masks may not be sold as medical devices or products of personal protective equipment.
Everyday masks do not provide the performance evidence defined in technical standards as required for medical face masks and particle filtering half masks. Thus, they generally provide less protection than these regulated and tested mask types. However, this does not mean that they have no protective effect. Internationally, there are numerous scientific publications that confirm the experience gained about the effectiveness of the mouth-nose coverings in terms of general population protection. The protective effect of the masks depends on the tightness and quality of the material used, the adaptation to the shape of the face and the number of layers of fabric. For example, tightly woven fabrics are more suitable than lightly woven fabrics in this context. Thus, according to current knowledge, the correct wearing of good everyday masks can significantly reduce the risk from droplets containing pathogens.
A special group of everyday masks are those manufactured according to a special standard, the European Essen Workshop Agreement CWA 17553.
While these masks are also everyday masks and therefore neither personal protective equipment nor medical devices with corresponding mandatory testing requirements and regulatory control, the CWA nevertheless imposes specific performance requirements on these masks. They must filter at least 70% or 90% of particles 3, plus minus 0.5 microns in diameter.
Although a separate standard is used here, these masks, like other everyday masks, are not subject to any specific government or other regulatory oversight such as medical devices or personal protective equipment. The manufacturer is solely responsible for the implementation of the specifications. Nevertheless, this labeling can be a sign of quality if the standard is applied correctly.
Medical face masks.
Medical face masks, mouth-nose protection, MNS, often also called surgical masks, are disposable products that are normally used in everyday clinical practice or in doctors' offices. They are made of special plastics and have a multi-layer structure. In their appearance they are very similar, rectangular shape with folds so that the mask can adapt to the face. The front side, outside, is usually colored, the back side, inside, is not. The masks have ear loops and a wire nose clip. They have clearly defined filtering properties.
Medical face masks are medical devices and were developed for the protection of others. They primarily protect the counterpart from emitted infectious droplets from the face mask wearer. However, medical face masks can also protect the wearer of the mask if they are fitted tightly, even though this is not their actual function. In hospitals, for example, they are used to prevent droplets from the doctor's breath from getting into a patient's open wounds.
Taking revenge on oneself.
When a person is angry or furious with another, he takes revenge on himself for his own confused unreasonableness.
SSSC, June 30, 2011, 23.15 hours.
With that, you actually?
May I take a picture of the whole thing and forward it to Ptaah?
Of course. When is Ptaah coming back?
Thank you. Ptaah is far away on a Federation planet called Ashurban where a lengthy Federation conference is being held.
But I didn't really want to know that much, just when he's coming back.
It will be 11 more days. What I should mention, though, you are to pass on greetings to the members of the core group and to his request that in the weeks that are now coming they should keep very especially away from strangers and not talk to strangers without wearing protective masks on each other. The next few weeks, he explained, would not only be precarious, but much more hazardous to your health than before, as you would know. It was not only appropriate, but in accordance with a necessity, that during the next weeks the center would only be left if there was an urgent need for it. And if that is the case, then the wearing FFP2 or FFP3 protective masks is indispensable, as it is also of urgent necessity for all people on Earth and corresponds to the perception of responsibility with regard to one's own and any other person, as well as to keeping a proper distance.
Then it just lasts a little longer. And the warning of to this, I think that this is appropriate, because as we must determine, unfortunately, is partly acted by certain people quite irresponsibly. That must be said unfortunately once, but that I can call you, if something important comes up, then it is also okay.
Yes, but you should now go to sleep, dear father friend, because your appearance shows fatigue. Obviously, you don't give yourself enough rest, which you need. Apparently you still keep it, as Semjace told me, that you usually sleep only 2 to 4 hours.
That's a bit exaggerated, because sometimes I sleep 5 hours, when I can't keep my eyes open while watching the news or something, and then I disappear for a few minutes, half an hour or even a whole hour, which apparently sometimes has to happen. But you're right, because I'm really tired, and if I go over and lie down for a bit now, it'll soon be 7 o'clock again and time to get up.
You really don't sleep enough, though.
Life is short, even if it lasts a little longer, and besides, it is not given to be lazy, but to fulfill, to learn, to study, to work something sensible, and to do the duty of life, which is given to cultivate, in the creative sense, the days that is all given to exist and live in it, with it, and through it. And this existence includes the universe, the planet, all ecosystems, the atmosphere and the climate, as well as nature, its entire fauna and flora, and thus also the importance of all people and the totality of all living beings of all genera and species, for which we as humans have to take care and to cherish everything in order to preserve it and to pass it on to our descendants in all future. Unfortunately, only a few people think, feel and act according to this, because they much rather believe in a
dear God,
who will already fix everything. Consequently they do not think and do not act themselves and put their fate into the imaginary hands of this illusory figure. It is just for altogether all God-believers thousandfold much easier to bury the head in the sand after the proverb of the bird Strauss, to see nothing, to hear nothing, to do nothing, and simply to wait to be overtaken by the death. And that was never and is not my case. Therefore I try to use the time of my life in the right way and for the fulfillment of my duty, and therefore I can neither waste the time of my life nor play the slacker.
Your words make me think, and I feel strangely affected. Dear father friend, I am ashamed. Now, I think, I need to talk to Ptaah, because it is probably that he calls you a true friend. What you said I have never thought of in that way. But
go ahead and talk. Even a girl like you can come across things that stir and make you think.
I feel embarrassed.
There is no reason for that, because there is probably no human being in the whole universe who can think about and understand everything out of himself in his whole life, but needs the whole existence and other persons, in order to come across jumping points by observation, hearing, living together and verbal communication, which stimulate to think and let win realizations, which finally lead to the personally right behavior in relation to himself, the existence and just the whole environment, in regard to the people, the planet, the nature and its whole fauna and flora. This is not possible especially for the God-believing people, because they are caught in their delusion in such a way that they do not find the slightest chance to create themselves and from themselves a logical and just consequence correct thought, by which they could learn to think themselves, than to hang after only believing delusions and to waste with it their life.
When I listen to you, dear father friend, your words touch me more and more strangely. But that you are attacked by the believing people, as I know, when you speak against their faith, that I do not understand now even more, after what you have said. What I can see from your words, after all, is not attacking people's personality, but you are objecting to what they are doing in a wrong way.
Yes, you understand that correctly, because I do not attack the personality of the people, because that is taboo for me. But my rumbling is directed against the wrong thinking and acting, consequently everything on and at the planet, the ecosystems, the nature and its fauna and flora is destroyed, annihilated and exterminated, as well as the atmosphere and the climate are brought out of bounds. And the basic evil to it is and remains the overmass of the overpopulation, which was bred since ancient times, behind which apart from the human sex drive also again God delusion faith and a Bible nonsense.
Go and multiply.
Yes, I understand. But now, dear father friend, I'm going now, because you are very tired. And when you call me, I will come as my activity allows me. Then, it is always a need for me. Goodbye, dear father friend.
Goodbye, and thank you for your visit, Florena.